Okay, excellent. I'm going to tell you about two things that don't matter for anything, but I think you should know. Thing one is that there is a big table in the entryway that you may have been wondering about, or maybe you didn't wonder about it. You just stopped and went, wow, that is beautiful wood. And isn't that lovely construction? Either which way, it is a try-on table. We're going to see how it works in the church. We have a congregant who would like to make a gift of it if it works for us. So don't worry about it. It's a little bit temporary, perhaps, or perhaps we'll find a place and keep it. I'm not sure yet, but it is very nice for them to make that available for us. The second thing is, I know there's a lot going on today, and I keep on looking outside at the weather, and it does not look like imminent scary things are going to happen. Nonetheless, I think we should postpone the history event until next Sunday, just to make sure that nobody has to deal with ice, even though, as I'm saying that right now and looking out, it feels like an absurd thing to say. But I think a little caution is on the better side. Having said that, this idea that our church does not exist in a vacuum and that we are deeply dependent on the historical context in which we find ourselves is really important. So anytime you want, you can, Marie will make index cards available, and you can write down significant historical events that matter in the course of our shared history and put those up on the wall, and we'll be cooking with gas. All right, does that make sense? Okay. I guess here is the third thing. A lot of today's sermon was inspired by this journal, The American Scholar, and this article, The Art of Kneeling and Why It's Time to Stand Together. So this here is where we are taking our inspiration from. So having said that, we will move on. Shall we get ready to worship together? Yes? Okay.
We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together we care for the church and for each other. I'd like to invite the small group choir to please come forward. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church, a growing, journeying community. My name is Gay Glasscott and I am the worship associate this morning. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are welcome and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little or a lot beat up this past week, this past year, this past 2 years. Being open and trusting again may take a little time. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust what happens in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and a little wiser. Thank you for choosing to be with us this morning, and just a gentle reminder to please silence your cell phones. Thanks. Please join me in the affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
Thank you, Gay. That was really, really spot on. Oh my goodness, I am so glad to see you. I'm so glad to see you here. Those of you who are longtime St. Johners, those of you who stepped through the doors for the first time today, and those of you who are coming home again. I am glad that you are here. I'm Mitra. I'm the minister here. I had a life before St. John's. It's true. In that life before St. John's, I was serving a congregation in Knoxville where we had not very many people, but we were a host congregation for what we called their Family Promise, which was part of the Interfaith Hospitality Network. What this group does is it takes the building spaces of houses of worship and uses them to shelter families throughout the week and provides an opportunity for people to interact. You know, we say every week that we're practicing the art of hospitality. This is actually gets us to practice the art of hospitality. It's really good work, and I kind of love it. And there's more, because before I was a minister, I worked with people who were homeless or marginally housed. And very often there is a little, I want to be a very positive person in saying this. Very often there can be a little bit of an edge on the way we provide charity. So for example, one time I had a 14-year-old boy and his father, and I couldn't get them placed anywhere without separating them because the 14-year-old was considered an adult. Yeah. So what I truly appreciate about being able to work with Interfaith Hospitality Network when I was in Knoxville was that they just did not do that. They did not take teenagers from their parents. They provided, and I'm only speaking from my experience, we had a single homeless woman who was pregnant who was included in their services. We had families that were comprised in unconventional ways and they just didn't care. You call yourself family, come on in. And it was a real opportunity for the church to be of service, of deep and true and honest service. And it was delightful. It was hard. It's really hard. And it was good. So both things were true. Over the course of a number of years, they averaged an 80% or above success rate of keeping families housed. I'm not even doing the introduction for this week's Split the Plate partner. I'm going to invite Wanda up, and I'm going to ask Wanda to introduce herself, and she's going to introduce Stacy. And Stacy, who is actually the executive director of this wonderful group here, will tell us about IHN and why it matters. I will tell you that part of the reason I am at St. John's is because even though St. John's does not host families in our space, we provide support to a congregation that does host families in their space and have been doing it for years. If you want to talk about helping to heal the world and helping to make the world kinder, this is a good way to start. You guys want to come on up? All right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wanda Crawford, and I am the longtime St. John's coordinator for IHN. And I see many of you here today who have been involved over the years in helping to provide hospitality to families over at First Church, which is the congregation where families stay out of many, probably dozens of congregations that host throughout the years. So we've been involved with this for over 15 years. And I'm really grateful for that support that St. John's continues to give, both in terms of volunteers opening up their hearts, and also the generosity of the congregation financially to support IHN. So this is something that I think aligns really well with both our mission and also, as Mitra alluded to, it becomes kind of a spiritual practice of hospitality. So I am thrilled to have with us today Stacy Burge, who is the executive director of IHN, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what IHN does here in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area.
Thank you, Wanda, and thank you for having me here this morning. And thank you for doing the work that you've been doing for 15 years. It's absolutely vital. And as was just said, it is both really hard work, but really important work, and definitely a unique way to put the idea of radical hospitality into action. At IHN, we've always really been about two things: being a place for families, however they identify themselves, to go when they have no place else to go. Whatever whatever caused houselessness, once you get there, being an option for people who have no other option. And then the other part of what we have always done is about making sure families have opportunities to get back to safe, affordable housing. You all have been really intimately involved in that first part, being a part of that emergency shelter system for families. We are still doing alternative sheltering right now in hotels because of COVID. We are hoping to be back to our normal operations at some point in the next year or so. And so even though you cannot be with families on their journey in the same way that you've done in the past, we still very, very much need you to help with food and supplies and money. I'll just be quite honest, to help us continue that alternative sheltering until it's safe for us to be back in congregations the way that we're not used to. The other thing I want to mention today, and I want you to continue to be involved with, or maybe grow involvement in the future, is we have been working really hard on that second part of our mission about safe, affordable housing. The issue of affordable housing and whether or not there's a lack of it here in Cincinnati isn't a debate at IHN. I know sometimes it's a debate in the community, but we see it in action every day. And as we shelter families, they are staying in shelter longer, And it's becoming harder and harder to find them housing because there are not habitable, affordable options. There just aren't. Used to take us 30 days to get people through shelter and into housing just 5 years ago. Now it takes 85 on average. The longer people stay in shelter, the less families in need that we get to serve during the course of a year. So in addition to the number of housing subsidy programs that we offer at IHN, we are also putting up our first housing development in Walnut Hills. Will hopefully be operational in October of this year. And there'll be opportunities for our partners like you to be involved in radical hospitality at that site as well, in terms of helping us build community for families who are coming into housing in that space. So thank you. Please continue to stick with us through COVID because we will get to the other side. And I look forward to these new opportunities together.
IHN is our split the plate partner for this month. Later in the service, we will hear from the Hub, which is getting an outreach grant from us. So this is kind of fun. Like we had Santa last month, and this month we get to play Santa. So I invite you during the offering, and we're still asking you to bring it forward and put it in the plate. I invite you during the offering to please be generous with IHN. Also, it is our tradition at St. John's to share our joys and concerns in the creation of a mosaic of stones in a shared common dish. I will hold out a bowl of stones, and if there is a joy or sorrow that you would like to mark this today, something from the past week, or something that's on your heart or mind, I invite you to take a stone and place it in the dish of sand. If you have a prayer requests that you would like spoken out loud, I am happy to do that if you write it on a piece of paper and give it to me. For our friends who are online, if you could put your joy or sorrow in chat, I will make sure that's included. And I believe that our Zoom hosts will make it possible for you to give electronically during the offering. And Peng Chang will play for us. Let us share our gifts, share our joys, share our sorrows, and be community together. Hung Cheng, thank you. Always, always beautiful. All right. We have a few joys and sorrows to share this morning. Barbara Haddon writes that one of her dearest friends, Linda Carmichael Rose, a former member here, died shortly after Thanksgiving. For those who are in the sanctuary, if you look to this wall on the piano side, this was where the original exterior of the building was before they built the sanctuary. And because they were avant-garde in 1959, 1960, they left a portion of the original wall in its yellow glazed brick in our sanctuary. And it was meant to be a transparent nod to what had come before, but after some years, they realized it was just ugly. And it was Linda Carmichael Rose who saved us from that and went in and painted each and every brick by hand to match the surrounding bricks. So yes, she is very much part of our community, and Barbara, as her friend, I know she will be missed, but we honor her presence with us this morning. We lift up our prayers in memory of Agnes Roberts Spurlock, described as a strong woman and a fighter. And we give our hearts to John Kachuba, who will be beginning radiation this week. Friends, right now, there are a number of us in and around our community who are struggling with this virus. One of my dear friends and neighbors is sick. Some in the congregation are ailing. And we are all feeling the pressure of entering another season with this virus. So let us be mindful of the stresses and the difficulties of this. Let us do everything we can to care for each other and to love each other through times that are too troubled. And let us commit ourselves to being a beloved community, to caring deeply in every way we can, because this endeavor of living and making a way together really is its own reward. It is its own gift and grace. May we be conscientious, dedicated, and careful with it. So may it be. Amen. All right. Now, I told you a few things about me. You learned maybe for the first time today that I served a church in Tennessee and that I used to work with people who were struggling with housing issues. But I'm going to tell you something now that I almost guarantee that none of you would ever guess is true. Are you ready? I used to coach soccer. Your laughter is justified because I was really astoundingly bad. When my children were really small, I coached soccer for a season. It is an absurd and unfortunate truth. I know nothing about soccer, a fact that my participation in coaching did not change. So you wonder, why did I do this? Well, I did it because my kid was small and my husband was away and no one else would do it because none of the other parents would, the people who knew things, I know this because they yelled at me when I was up there. They were not volunteering to coach and they all had their reasons. And I honestly figured if one of them saw me up there, that they would step forward and they would offer to coach. It did not work. They did not come through for the sake of the children. They didn't do it. But I did learn some things. For example, I learned that small children will always run in the direction of small children running. And I learned that sometimes Dandelions are more interesting than soccer balls. And when someone on the field is hurt, you stop what you are doing and you take a knee. And this rule about stopping for the injured goes beyond friendship or team status. It is a recognition that we are all sharing this space together, that we are playing this game together, and that what affects you affects me. Little kids come with compassion. It's easy for them to understand that we are here to look out for one another, that when someone is hurting, we stop and take a knee. I think it was 2009 when I went on a pilgrimage to civil rights sites in the South. Tom and Mary Darner, if you were out there, this is the same one that you went on some years later. We visited with people who had been in those places and heard the call to action, and they had gotten up and they had gone. They had made the world a little better. One of the women we met there was Joanne Bland. And she told us how her grandmother got her up in the morning to go march for their rights. They followed the lead of Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis, and they were met with extreme violence. So here I am in 2009 talking with this grown woman who was telling us about when she was a little bitty girl, thinking about her as a little bitty girl, trusting the grown-ups to keep her safe, going with the excitement on that first day and getting beaten and getting knocked down and getting knocked out cold and waking up in the arms of her family. And then getting up the next morning to have her grandmother tell her that today again, we are going to gather and we are going to put one foot in front of the other. And we are going across that bridge and to Selma because we already have a God-given right to participate in our democracy. The legislators just need to do the right thing. Think about her, that little bitty girl getting up after having been beaten and stepping out in both fear and hope, surrounded by the confidence that people would eventually do the right thing. I think about representatives of our government, men who joined the police force for what must have been 1,000 different reasons, men who held the line against the marchers, against those who knelt on bended knee in nonviolent protest, against little bitty children who were physically no threat to the institutions of oppression. But spiritually, these little bitty children spiritually would ultimately be the undoing of those same institutions. The truth is always more complex than what I can say in a sermon. I will not tell you that other perspectives and other ways are always wrong. I will not say that it was right unequivocally to put children in the march of history's progress. I will say that at the time and in the context of that day, there was an unexpected, unanticipated, unseen power in the presence of nonviolence. There's a famous photo of King kneeling with 100 people behind him in the same pose there's a famous image of Martin Luther King Jr. kneeling, and behind him you can see all these other people kneeling. There were 250 people who had set out to march to Selma, and they were arrested for an unlawful parade. And this picture was taken right before they went into the courthouse. This picture was taken in a moment of prayer. Maham Abadi, writing in the Global News in 2017, introduced her readers to the story of this particular pose. She writes, while King's gesture was a prayer, kneeling has a long history in the Black rights movement throughout history. Ronaldo Walcott, the director of the Women and Gender Studying Institute at the University of Toronto, explained that a drawing from the 1780s of an enslaved Black man became an emblem of the British abolition movement in the 1800s. The image went on to be circulated for years. Beneath this image of this man, there's a scroll that reads, "Am I not a man and a brother?" And above that scroll is a man kneeling, and he is shackled. Walcott said, "The kneel has been a kneel about articulating the promise and desire of freedom from oppression." This whole article in 2017 was written in response to Colin Kaepernick's kneeling. Here was this American athlete who had taken a knee and had made news around the world. He had started doing this as a protest to raise awareness of the continued oppression and exploitation of Black people in America. The irony is not lost that the death of George Floyd came under the bent knee of Derek Chauvin. After Floyd's murder, protesters across America took a knee. Just curious, how many of you participated in that, where you bent on one knee for the count of minutes going by? I did that, and the thing is, I really messed up my leg. I really hurt myself, because to hold that position for so long hurt me. And I was freely entering into it at a protest movement in a park in an affluent neighborhood. Why do we do this? We do this because someone on the same field as we are on was hurt, because we are all trying to stay safe, because it doesn't matter what team you're on, because what impacts you impacts me. In 2016, when George Floyd was killed, we took a knee in protest, but also in sober recognition that we as human beings can be really cruel to each other. If we want the compassion of children who stop for dandelions and boo-boos, we need to actively seek to recover something we have lost. And I believe we cannot recover what we have lost without turning to something larger than ourselves. I have told you about the recent protests and of Kaepernick. We have mentioned John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. and the brave men, women, and children who followed their lead. We have followed history back to the abolitionist movement in England in the 1870s. Now let us return to that posture of prayer. The slogan under the image, "Am I not a man and a brother?" was understood to imply a brother in Christ. The imagery in the abolition movement was a successor to images created by Albrecht Dürer, who showed the wise men, specifically Balthasar, as an African king kneeling at the cradle of Jesus. Man, Albrecht Dürer, why'd you have to go and do that? Yeah, all that colonialism is right there in the image. And yet there is more. The church, in its best sense, is here to affirm the goodness of all people. It says that no one is less than. It says that in the presence of God, there is no division. There's no division between any of us. Paul references this, that famous passage in Galatians where he says, in Jesus, there is no slave, no free, no man, no woman. I know he says other things, but he does say that part also. The church, in its very best sense, can hold up an ideal that we are one. It is a radical idea that comes inevitably from the untenable ideas which support oppression. A child can never physically threaten the grown officer on horseback, but the children will always live to write the next story. Brotherhood is by its nature infantile, right? If I speak to you of brotherhood, I'm already invoking parenthood and siblinghood, and you think about little people, right? Like young children, brotherhood. You with me? I think there's power in that statement from 1870. So yes, it is gendered and yes, it is out of date, but the power in that statement is the power of the child. It is the power of those children who marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge holding the hands of their grandmothers. It is the power of the powerlessness. It is the power of kneeling. It is the power that we get when we give away power. For those who see in the story of Jesus, the story of a man who lives out the message of radical love, we might also see the story of all children of God. What I'm saying here is, if Jesus is not God incarnate, if Jesus is not a Superman by the nature of Jesus's being, but Jesus is a human being like us, a beloved child of God, then if you look around, every person here is a beloved child of God. Every person you encounter is a beloved child of God. And we talk about this. We talk about seeing the light of God in each other. We talk about seeing the goodness of each other. Recently, I heard a man named Matthew Barzum talk about seeing the power in each other. This guy was US ambassador to Sweden under Obama and part of Obama's team for fundraising and decentralizing. And I know y'all have heard about like Starfish organization and grassroots organizations and all these ways that decentralize power. But what Barzum does that's kind of cool is he talks about us as constellations. So not pyramids of hierarchy, but as constellations of power. And when we do that, we see each other as stars. And we affirm not only the goodness of one another, but the power that lies in each person. There is power in seeing power in each other. The problem, he says, with the pyramid is somebody's always going to be on top. You're always going to be playing king of the mountain. If you say, well, we just need to change the pyramid so someone else is at the top, you still have a pyramid. And you still have winners and losers. It doesn't have to be that way. There are other options. If we see each other as constellations of bright, shining stars, if we honor the power and the deep humanity of each and every one of us, if we practice a little more solidarity, what would happen? What would happen if Balthazar, the wise man, and Jesus were playing soccer on a field? And like over there, Lao Tzu got injured, twisted an ankle maybe. My guess is that everyone would take a knee, that everybody would slow down for the sake of all. So maybe it's time for us to adopt a little more humility and practice a little more solidarity. Maybe the radical thing to do in the context of this hour is to kneel beside your neighbor who is hurting or afraid, even when you don't agree with them. Even if you think you are not playing on the same team. At the end of it all, let us return to the words of Rumi, who says, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And I would add, there might even be dandelions, if we're lucky. So may it be. Amen. Rob has prepared a special sung response for us. This is I Dream a World.
I dream a world where man, no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth, and peace its paths adorn. saps the soul, nor avarice lights our world I dream, where black and white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. I dream a world where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all. Of such I dream, my world. I dream a world. I dream a world where man, no other man, will scorn, where love will bless the earth, and peace its paths adorn.
That is absolutely lovely. Thank you. Sometimes in church, things happen in a particular way. I ran into Dave Terry in the wilds of a grocery store, and he said, "Hey, I have this idea about the hub." And I said, "Okay." I had no idea what he was talking about at all. And then later at a meeting, Nancy says, "I had this great experience at the hub." And I said, "Okay." And eventually I was like, connect the dots, Mitra. Like, really, like, there are congregants from St. John's popping up all over the place, even in the vegetable aisle, talking about this great place, the hub, where they are able to go and volunteer and make the world a better place. And then they turned out to be the recipient of our outreach grant. So that is very exciting. So Debbie, I'd like to invite you up, come on up, and we can hear about this good work. And then after that, we have a skit, a dramatic presentation. I'm not sure what it was. We'll find out together. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, the Cincinnati Reuse and Recycling Hub is the recipient of our St. John's 2021 outreach grant, as Mitra just shared. And we are extremely grateful for what the hub is doing for environmental justice by recycling or reusing practically everything. And this grant is going to help them establish drop-off locations in underserved areas, making recycling available to everyone. So with that, I will let you hear from Colleen McSwiggan, Director of the Hub. And I will present you with the check.
Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen, as she said, and I am the managing director of the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub. We are still a fairly new organization. Sort of the idea for the hub came in about 2018. I had done electronics recycling days at Mount St. Joseph University, where I used to work. And we had one event at Oak Hills High School where we had 764 cars through the line. In 3.5 hours, we filled 5 semis, and I still had to tell 150 people, we can't take your stuff, including this little old lady who had a big wooden console TV in the back of her minivan. And I had to just say, I can't take it. I don't even know where to tell you where else to take it. So that was kind of like the light bulb of the only way that I can see to solve this problem is having a permanent place. So I kind of thought about it for a while, and then I thought, hey, I know of other organizations that could also use some help. I knew of an organization called Zero Landfill Cincinnati. They got design samples from architectural firms and design studios when they no longer needed them. So wallpaper books and tile and wood flooring and fabric samples and things like that. And that organization had moved around 5 times in 12 years, so people couldn't always find them. So I reached out to Carrie, who was the managing director of that, and said, hey, would you want to go in on a permanent space? And she said, sounds like a good idea to me. So she sort of put something out on Facebook, and along the way, we found 18 other very committed people who had backgrounds in sustainability from one way or another, including the woman who started sustainability for the Flying Pig Marathons. And since we opened in April of 2021, we've saved 80 tons from the landfill, including almost 50 tons of electronics, almost 10 tons of post-consumer plastic that couldn't go to Rumpke. We've sent almost 1,500 pounds of shoes to Souls for Souls for recycling and reuse. And then we've had almost 13 tons of items taken away by teachers, artists, just people who are creative and say, hey, I could do something with that. We have this available for the general public, but then we also send things to over a dozen other nonprofits. We kind of see it as the more successful we are, the more successful they will also be. So kind of a greasing the wheel to just make things, run a little bit smoother. I cannot tell you how much we are grateful for receiving this grant. This will allow us to have our first offsite electronics recycling event, which will be sometime this summer or early fall. We're hoping in either Lincoln Heights or Arlington Heights, where it's a lower income area and there are barriers to recycling. And we feel very strongly that it needs to be an equitable thing, because the more that we recycle and reuse things, the more we can mitigate the effects of climate change, because we're not using those resources to create new items. And climate change affects lower income areas, people of color, more so than it does more privileged people. So we're hoping kind of everybody can be on board, everybody can have a little bit more stake and be able to sort of control their destiny a little bit more maybe. So just thank you very much for this. I also just want to say thank you to, I saw Dave earlier, and and Nancy back there, and we can always use volunteers. Basically, if you come to the hub, there's a sorting area where you can bring all of your materials, and we have volunteers sort of help you get things to different areas. And then we also have a 20,000 square foot warehouse up on the 4th floor, where we just need help baling plastic or putting shoes in boxes or sorting fabrics and just going through things. So it's one of those things where many hands make light work, and we always need many hands. So we would be happy to just have anybody that could come. You can sign up on our website for that. And then also too, I will sort of let Nancy and Dave know, and probably Debbie as well, when we actually have our event. If anybody would like to come and actually help get things out of cars for the electronics day too, we would love to have any of you there as well. So just thanks again. And thank you for all of the help that you've allowed us to help other people.
If I may add, that's a good amount of creativity, and go get them. And you said you opened in 2021? Yes, and it was And it was needed. And thank you for doing that work. I just want to bring it back around to like, we've got a commitment at St. John's to green sanctuary ethos, which means living green, working for environmental justice. Also, the commonality here with IHN, which is a group that years ago looked out and said, what are these buildings being used for on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Yeah, let's put them to use. So the creative repurposing and reuse. Speaking of creativity, can I invite our spontaneous announcement players forward?
Okay, are we ready? Okay. Nancy, it's great that Rumpke helps us with the recycling.
Yes, it is, but I still have a lot of things I used to throw away.
Guess what? I heard of a place called the Recycling and Reuse Hub.
I found the website. Let's check it out.
Look at this. They take all kinds of things that I used to throw away.
I have a bunch of hangers they will take.
I have a bunch of flower pots they can have.
I have plastic utensils that go down the tube pipe.
This is great. Oh, look here. They can use volunteers.
I got the time for a good cause. Sign me up.
Me too. This is a lot of fun.
Let's all go. Here's the website. I will post the website in our community Facebook group, and we can also include it in the newsletter this week to make it accessible to everyone. And there's also Google search.
Plus, we'll also put the hours that they're open for drop off,
Yes.
Thursdays and Saturdays, so that you know when to show up with your sorted goods. You have no idea how much stuff they take until you go to the website.
Actually, I do, because on the flip side of that, as Director of Religious Life here, I am responsible for getting supplies for activities for the children. And I actually, when I dropped some things off, took advantage of the opportunity for teachers of various sorts to go upstairs and see what was reusable. And I acquired some materials. So that means, right, that there's less money I have to spend and more money available to donate. Yay! So come full circle. Thank you.
Okay.
Guys, I promise you, if you run into any of these people in the grocery store, they will remind you of the hub. It is true, and it is good. We have some more announcements, but I'm going to leave them for the e-news on Tuesday. If you haven't signed up for that, please do. We've got a couple classes starting this week that are very, very good. But I do want to say a big, giant thank you to all of you for making Reverend Daleen welcome last week. She had a really good time. She said the sanctuary was cold, but the people were warm, which brings me to my second thank you to Jeff and Cliff for making sure that the heat was working again this week. So we are very thankful for that. Very thankful indeed. And thankful to all of you who make this place a wonderful community to be a part of. It is good to be here. It is good to be together. It is good to work together for the betterment of all. May I invite our singers forward for our closing hymn. Thank you. From the center of our hearts outward to the world, let us remember to hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to life, even when it is easier letting go. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. My friends, the world calls to us, wants us to be in solidarity, to find the beauty, the strength, the power in each and every one, that we might begin to make the world whole once again. I invite you to go in peace, but loiter and join each other in conversation as you feel so inclined. Next week, I believe I will not be here because I will be sharing a pulpit with a Baptist minister. We were going to just switch pulpits, but then we thought having a random Baptist pop up here might upset people. And going to your local Baptist church and having me, a fabulous Unitarian, might seem a bit heretical. So we are going to be together in this pulpit and in his pulpit. And next week, we'll have a guest here to talk about Quakerism and his experience with that faith. Go in peace, my friends. Be well, and we will meet again soon. Thank you.